So as I'm sitting here listening to a lot of other YouTube creators make their videos about how you can incorporate the X-Men universe into the MCU. And I think that a lot of them are really good with how far they go into depth, but I think that they're making it a little bit too convoluted and too complicated. I think that simple is better when it comes to things like this. As far as if I was to incorporate Fantastic Four or X-Men into the MCU, this is how I would do it. That whole organization that was, I guess, the Fantastic Four was working for, that could easily be S.H.I.E.L.D. You can easily have a scene where they're just coming back from a mission, or they're in the hangar, doing their normal experiments, and they call them all to a meeting. And in a meeting, just like in Captain America Civil War, instead of the Secretary of State walking in, what's his name? I forgot his name, the Colonel guy. But instead of him walking in, you could have Nick Fury walk in. And simple as that, the Fantastic Four is sitting there waiting for their meeting. Nick Fury walks in and says, "I'm the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., the guy that's been running this organization you've been working for, and I have a new mission for you." And he walks in and he has War Machine with him, or Black Widow more naturally, or Agent Coulson, or Maria Hill, or something like that, to sort of show you that these universes are connected. And when he tells them about a mission, he lines the Fantastic Four up with Cap. Even though he's on the run, I'm assuming this is going to be after Infinity War. You line them up with Cap and Black Widow and War Machine, and you send them on their way. Now, as far as how you incorporate the X-Men, that's a little bit more complicated because of Professor X and the whole convoluted universe that they created over there with Fox. I don't think that you should completely do away with that. I think that you need to reintroduce these characters as in their current form, that how they're being used at Fox. Even with Hugh Jackman playing Logan, you need to reintroduce them like that, but it has to be in a way that somebody from the MCU knew about it. Now, if that means going back and sort of reverse canonizing certain references and things like that in the MCU, maybe at certain points in time where things were referenced, you can sort of change the origin of what that reference means, sort of how they did Spider-Man and Iron Man 2. They said that little kid that was right there, he ended up being Iron Man or Spider-Man when he was a kid. So you kind of can do that with X-Men a little bit. Just sort of, go back and say, well, this reference right here was a reference to Storm, or this was a reference to Professor X, or this was a reference to the Mansion, or, something like that. You can do that. You can play with that. Or as far as like setting up a scene where you actually bring them back, I would have it have something to do with Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange and Professor X, or Doctor Strange, not Doctor Strange, excuse me, Scarlet Witch and Professor X. They seem like the two that would have some sort of psychic connection or psychic meeting, and then you can go from there. I mean, you even can say that Professor X has been communicating psychically with Doctor Strange or Scarlet Witch for years, but they just never met because they're in two different alternate dimensions. And that's where you get the thing where Doctor Strange goes back and forth between the X-Men dimension and the MCU. He was the only one that can cross over. So how I would do it personally is I would have the X-Men at the mansion doing their normal thing, and I would have a portal open up the way that Doctor Strange opens up his portals, and I would have Doctor Strange just walk through the portal and be right there in the middle of a mansion, in the middle of Professor X doing the class, So Professor X doing his class, a portal's opens up, Doctor Strange comes out, and Professor X looks up at Doctor Strange and says, "I've been waiting for you." And there you go. And you have a scene where Doctor Strange is talking to Professor X, and then you kind of can just fast forward into bringing more characters and introducing them later on in the movie. But it's almost as simple as that. All you need is a scene in the movie that says these characters exist in the same universe. And the only way I see you could do that is with Doctor Strange appearing at the mansion. It doesn't really necessarily get into the storyline about how they will be in the future and how you would craft out which characters for which movie. I'm not getting into that. I'm talking more or less about how do you introduce them. And I think it doesn't have to be all that complicated. You just need one or two scenes and a couple of good lines that establishes that, hey, Professor X and Doctor Strange has been communicating telepathically, or Professor X and Scarlet Witch has been communicating telepathically for years, but they could never see each other because they're in alternate dimensions. But the way you can bridge that dimension is through Doctor Strange appearing in the X-Men dimension and bringing them to the MCU. Maybe that's for Avengers 4, but they're already shooting that. So I see that kind of like a phase 4 type of thing. Again, I'm not really getting into the whole storyline and the future of the movies with all these characters together. I'm just saying this is how you can introduce these characters into the MCU. Well, that's enough for what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you think those are good scenes and good ways to introduce the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the MCU? Let me know in the description and the comments down below. Once again, I'm your boy Dreads, and I will catch you out there in the universe.